Hey folks, tonight we're diving into something surprisingly familiar: sleep, or more specifically, how people in the Middle Ages actually slept, which turns out to be stranger than you probably expect. Before settling in, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, but only if you're truly enjoying this kind of content. Also, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing who's joining from all over the globe. Now dim the lights, maybe switch on a fan for some soft ambient noise, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Back before electricity, sleep apps, and wellness influencers, people in medieval times had a nighttime routine that would confuse today's sleep experts. It was called segmented sleep, a natural, two-phase sleep pattern divided cleanly in the middle like an old dry biscuit. Here's how it worked. Once the sun went down, people usually went to bed early, slipping into what was called first sleep. After about 4 hours, they'd wake up on purpose and spend the next hour or two doing what can best be described as medieval multitasking at midnight. This wasn't insomnia. This was normal. The gap between these two sleep sessions was seen as useful, practical, and surprisingly social. People would use this time to pray, read devotional texts, tend the fire, or check on animals, because nothing kills sleep like the thought of your goat escaping again. And yes, this was also considered prime time for intimacy. Old medical guides and marriage handbooks said the body was rested and the mind at ease during this window, which is basically a polite way of saying too sleepy to argue. So if you think you're being romantic by waking up early to make your partner breakfast, just know your ancestors were doing something different. After that came second sleep, lasting until sunrise. Everyone followed this pattern. Monks, peasants, and even writers like Chaucer casually referenced it. Writers like Chaucer even mentioned it casually, meaning that, yes, medieval folks were openly aware of their odd sleep patterns. Interestingly, modern research suggests that segmented sleep may be more natural for humans. The two-phase cycle lines up quite well with our circadian rhythms when artificial lighting isn't involved. So next time you're staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., don't panic. Just whisper, "Ah yes." The watch begins, and maybe pretend you're stoking a symbolic fire. It wasn't until the rise of industry, with factories, gas lamps, and a rising fear of wasted hours, that we started treating sleep like a competition. 8 straight hours or you've failed. But back in medieval times, waking up in the middle of the night wasn't a problem. It was the norm, and everyone followed it, whether they liked it or not. Let's talk about beds, or at least what passed for beds in that era. Today we chase thread counts, gel layers, and cloud-like mattresses. In medieval Europe, a bed was often just a heap of former plant matter, now flattened by generations of uneasy rest and unresolved life choices. Most peasants slept on a straw mattress, often called a pallet, literally just hay stuffed into coarse cloth, assuming they even had cloth. Otherwise, it was hay directly on the dirt floor, sometimes soaked, sometimes already occupied by a cat. Not exactly luxurious, but still better than bare ground, which was the only real alternative. Straw was cheap, fairly warm, and unfortunately, a 5-star resort for bugs, lice, and the occasional curious mouse. Sleeping became an art of staying mostly still. If it itched, you tried to ignore it. If it bit, you rolled over and prayed it wasn't contagious. Those slightly better off might raise the pallet on a wooden frame. This didn't exactly turn it into a spa bed, but it did reduce the chance of waking up with a frog in your ear. What about those cozy blankets? Are they soft enough to keep you warm? They were usually made of coarse wool, thick, itchy, and rarely washed. By midwinter, that blanket weighed as much as a full-grown dog thanks to layers of grime, soot, and who knows what. There were no sheets, no pillow-top mattress, no lavender-scented anything. Your pillow, if you had one, was stuffed with hay or rags. Otherwise, you just balled up your cloak and hoped for dreams that didn't involve rats. Now, about who you shared that bed with, privacy didn't exist. Families, especially peasants, all slept in the same room, often the same bed. Parents, children, maybe even a grandparent or an uncle who never moved out. Sometimes, even livestock stayed inside overnight for warmth and security. Yes, that meant sleeping with a chicken or goat underfoot wasn't unusual. And yes, there were accidents. If you were a traveler at an inn, sharing a bed with a total stranger wasn't just expected. It was the default. Bed sharing had nothing to do with intimacy. It was simply the only option. And if you were wealthy enough to sleep alone, congratulations. You still had to deal with drafty stone walls, a chamber pot, and the echo of someone snoring 2 rooms away through the cold. In winter, you froze. In summer, you sweated through layers you couldn't remove. And no matter the season, everything smelled faintly of livestock and boiled cabbage. So let's say you finally drift off to sleep. Blanket heavy, bugs biting, someone's foot in your rib, and a few hours later, just like clockwork, you wake up. This is your watch. That strange medieval intermission between first and second sleep. It's quiet. It's just dark, like when you close your eyes and can't see anything at all. It feels heavy, right? Maybe the fire's gone out. Some people took this time to pray, whispering devotionals in the dim light of a tallow candle. Others wrote letters, tended small chores, or just sat and reflected. If you were feeling ambitious, you might sneak outside, check the animals, visit the privy, or Stargazi under the night sky. But often, people stayed right there in bed, chatting softly or even having deep conversations, like a medieval version of late-night pillow talk. Except it was cold, itchy, and occasionally interrupted by livestock noises. Eventually, the second sleep would come, deeper, longer, and more restful. This was the sleep that carried people into dawn, and when the sun rose, the day began, whether you were ready or not. It's strange to think that something as basic as sleep, something we treat as private, uniform, and scientific, used to be this open, shared, and instinctual. And maybe, just maybe, there's something to learn from it. Morning in the Middle Ages wasn't peaceful. There was no gentle alarm clock, no sunrise meditation, no warm cup of coffee to ease into the day. Instead, you were jolted awake by the sound of roosters, church bells, or the collective groaning of everyone around you also dreading another day of survival. You stretch, and immediately regret it. The straw pokes your back, your joints crack like old floorboards, and the cold air bites harder than your neighbor's dog. You're 25. Practically elderly by medieval standards. Your back aches, your knees grind. You slept weird and now half your body thinks it's dying. You sit up and try to locate your shoes. Except you probably don't have any, or if you do, they're rough leather, barely stitched together, and already damp from last night's rain leaking through the roof. You shuffle across a dirt floor, careful not to step on a chicken, a child, or a suspiciously warm spot that could be anything. No running water, no sink. No mirror, huh? That's kinda wild, right? Just imagine getting ready without one. You splash some cold water on your face, if there's any left in the jug. You wipe with a cloth that hasn't been properly cleaned in weeks. Then, you start the fire again, assuming it didn't burn out completely overnight. Too warm, whatever you can, before the daily grind begins. Your clothes, the same ones you wore yesterday, and the day before, and probably the past 2 seasons. A scratchy wool tunic, thick with sweat, smoke, and history. Underwear, optional. Soap, a rare luxury. Personal grooming, basically a medieval dare. You scratch something that probably shouldn't itch inside. The day hasn't even started yet, and you're already tired. Time for breakfast, or at least what counts as breakfast. There are no buttery croissants, no sizzling bacon, and certainly no cappuccinos with foam hearts. What you get is pottage. A gloopy, greyish stew made of grains, old root vegetables, and whatever scraps were left from yesterday. It has been boiling in the same pot for days, maybe weeks, with new ingredients just dumped on top. There's no recipe, no spice, only a thick, earthy sludge that smells like sadness and boiled turnips on the side. A piece of bread that could double as a weapon. It's dense, dry, and possibly filled with ground-up bark, beans, or even sawdust. Because flour is expensive and creativity is cheaper, you don't bite it. You gnaw it like a rodent. If it doesn't crack a tooth, it's considered a good day. Drink options. Forget orange juice. Forget coffee. You're drinking small beer, a weak, low-alcohol ale that even children consume. Why do you think that is? It's such a curious question, right? Because the water isn't safe. It's full of parasites, waste, and the occasional floating regret. Boiling it into beer is the only way to survive, even if it tastes like liquid bread. No fruit, no cheese, unless it's gone hard and weird. Maybe on a holiday, if your landlord is feeling generous, which he isn't. So you choke down the pottage, soak the bread in beer to soften it, and hope your stomach doesn't stage a rebellion before midday. Now that you've eaten your questionable breakfast, it's time to get dressed. Not that it changes much. You own exactly one outfit, maybe 2, if you're unimaginably lucky. It's a coarse wool tunic or a rough linen shift that has seen more winters than you have fingers. There's no color coordination, no seasonal trends, just survival-grade fabric and the faint scent of mildew. If you have an underlayer, it's likely stained, stiff, and full of holes. If you don't, you're going commando under a T-wool, which is exactly as awful as it sounds. Your clothes haven't been washed in weeks, because laundry isn't just a chore, it's a full-day ordeal. Haul water from the well or stream, heat it over a fire, scrub garments with ashes or lye, and beat them with a stick. What happens next? I'm super curious to hear your thoughts on this. Hope for sunlight, which may or may not exist this season. Shoes, if you have any, they're flimsy, made from untreated leather, and about as protective as wet paper. Most peasants just walk barefoot, through mud, waste, sharp stones, and whatever mystery liquids the village streets are brewing today. Fleas, lice, and bedbug, they live with you. It's all about you, my friend. What do you think? Your thoughts matter. Inside your clothes, everyone is constantly scratching. Everyone stinks. And nobody talks about it because it's just part of life. You don't get ready for the day. You just survive your way into it. So, you're dressed technically. And now it's time to flash that morning smile. Except, you don't. Because smiling in the Middle Ages is a health risk. Not emotionally. Dentally, there's no toothbrush, no toothpaste, no floss, no concept of oral hygiene outside of maybe chewing a twig or rinsing with vinegar. If you refancy, by your mid-20s, your mouth resembles a haunted house. Teeth are rotting, gums are swollen, and that black spot on your molar, not going anywhere. Sugar is rare but gaining popularity among the rich, who show off with sweetened cakes and absolutely destroyed teeth. Poor folks, they rot slowly, thanks to years of gritty bread, fermented grain, and never flossing. Toothaches become part of your personality. Constant, pulsing, miserable. No dentists. But there are yes, the guy who trims your beard also yanks teeth with a metal hook by candlelight. No anesthesia, just pain, prayers, and maybe a swig of warm beer. If infection sets in, too bad. There are no antibiotics. A simple abscess can spread, become sepsis, and kill you. All because of a bad tooth. So no, you don't smile in the Middle Ages. You grimace, and hope nobody knows. Now that your teeth are throbbing and your body is buzzing with lice, it's time to go to work. Not to an office, not to a cafe, but to the field, where your job is simple. Survive while laboring for someone else's benefit. You're a peasant, which means the land you work on doesn't belong to you. It belongs to a lord who couldn't pick you out of a lineup, even if you were the only one there. Your tools, a wooden hoe, a rusty sickle, and a body that's already halfway broken by age 28. You rise with the sun and work until it disappears. There are no weekends, no holidays, unless you're dying or pretending to be sick. Sunday might be a break, unless you're in the middle of harvest, being raided, or your infected toe is turning black and screaming for attention. You dig trenches, haul water, sow seeds, harvest crops, chase off animals, repair fences, and carry bundles that weigh more than you hope. No one cares if your back hurts. Mental health, never heard of it. If you're a woman, the list doubled. You work the fields, and raise children, and cook, and clean, and try to ignore the fact that your husband now sleeps with a collection of beetles in his beard. Kids start working around age 5. No toys, no school, just tiny chores and the slow understanding that this is your entire future. If you're not a farmer, maybe you're a tanner, a blacksmith, a baker, or a cooper, still working long hours in dangerous conditions surrounded by smoke, fumes, and bodily fluids of questionable origin. Too bad you keep going, because if you stop, even for a day, you don't eat. And if you don't eat, someone else takes your place. Lunchtime arrives, if you can call it that. There's no break room, no neatly packed lunch, just a brief pause in your endless list of tasks while you sit on a rock, log, or maybe the least muddy patch of ground you can find. What's on the menu? Now colder, congealed, and somehow even sadder than it was this morning. Maybe you've got a crust of bread to gnaw on, or a small onion, or an apple, shriveled and bruised, but still a luxury. There's no variety, no flavor explosion, and definitely no dessert. Meals are fuel, nothing more. You chew, swallow, and get back to work before your lord remembers he hasn't yelled at someone yet. You eat with dirty hands, surrounded by flies. Your feet are sore, your stomach's still rumbling, and the sun is only halfway through its brutal shift. Water still unsafe, so you sip more weak ale. Flat, lukewarm, and mildly disgusting. But hey, it doesn't kill you, so that's something. If you're lucky, you share your meager meal with someone. A family member, a friend, maybe a neighbor. But small talk isn't a thing. You're too tired to be interesting. You don't discuss philosophy. You don't gossip about politics. You stare at the dirt, eat like a survivalist, and try not to pass out. Because as soon as you're done chewing, it's back to work, and the day is far from over. The afternoon grinds on. The sun gets hotter. Your legs feel heavier. Your will to live noticeably lower. You keep going, pulling, pushing, lifting, dragging all while your back screams and your hands crack open from sheer overuse. There's no sunscreen, no ergonomic tools, no union breaks. Just endless labor under a sky that never seems to care how exhausted you are. Occasionally, the local lord or steward might ride by on a well-fed horse, looking down at you like you're part of the scenery. Because to them, you kind of are. If you make a mistake, you're yelled at, fined, or worse. If you do well, nothing happens. There are no bonuses, no promotions, no hope. Sometimes you see someone collapse from heat or hunger. No one panics. No one rushes to help. They just let them lie there until they get up. Or don't. You steal glances at the sun, praying it'll sink faster, because only darkness brings rest. But not freedom. Never freedom. Because even when the workday ends, the chores don't. You finally drag yourself home. If you can call it that. It's not a cozy cottage with flower boxes and warm soup on the hearth. It's a single dark room, shared by too many bodies and not enough air. The floor is dirt. The roof leaks. The walls are made of mud, straw, and denial. There's no welcome. No relief. Just the dull thud of exhaustion as you sit down. Or more likely, collapse. You're starving again. But dinner's just another round of pottage. Maybe with a fresh root vegetable if someone got lucky. The same bland, gritty sludge that's been feeding and punishing you all week. You eat it in silence, hoping the spoon doesn't splinter in your mouth. Then, there are more chores. Feeding the animals, fixing what's broken, patching holes in clothing or walls or both, tending to sick relatives with zero medical knowledge, and a handful of guesses. No candles. Those are expensive. Just the fading firelight and the glow of sheer exhaustion. You check on the kids, who are already asleep, curled up together like puppies in a pile of rags. You scratch your scalp, try to ignore the lice, and wonder if that bump on your leg is just a bruise or something worse. And all the while, the night creeps in, cold, damp, and full of noises. And when the last ember fades, and your body finally gives in to sleep, not from peace, but from sheer defeat, you lie there in the dark, surrounded by silence, cold air, and the slow rhythm of others breathing beside you. And maybe, for a fleeting moment, between the itch and the ache, you wonder if this is all there is. This cycle of labor, hunger, and waiting for a life that never arrived. And still, somehow, you continue. Because in that broken bed, beneath a roof that barely holds, lies something strangely human. The quiet endurance of those who had nothing, and gave everything. They lived without comfort, without control, but not without meaning. Their lives, rough and laid the crooked foundation for the world we now inhabit. A world full of lights, pillows, distractions, and choices they could never dream of. And yet, for all our progress, our schedules, our endless striving for productivity, we sleep less peaceful. We rise more anxious. We move faster, but rarely deeper. Maybe their world, brutal and unforgiving, still held something we lost. A kind of raw honesty with the earth, the body, and the passing of time. So tonight, as you lie in your soft bed, with electricity humming, notifications glowing, and worries that rarely involve goats, pause for a second, and remember them, not with pity, not with judgment, but, it's with a sense of awe that we look at it. Because in the darkness they endured, they carried forward the fragile, stubborn flame of human survival. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? There's so much more to explore. It's no small thing.